If you haven't already, I'm just going to tell you now, guys. So this is the first live stream I have done in almost 4 years because I've been banned to do that. But kind of leading up to this, funny story is on July 4th of all days, right on Independence Day, I get this out of the blue email from YouTube telling me if I go through their retraining program, that they will unlock my ability to live stream, my ability to use the community tab, my ability to comment and publish videos, right? Of all days, they do this on July 4th. So I was like, wow, that's a sign, right? On the day of freedom, all of a sudden they decide after all these years to allow me to do these things as long as I go through their little education camp. And so I go ahead and go through the links. Of course, I start failing it right away. So my wife comes and helps me pass the class. And then they tell me in 90 days, I'll be able to live stream again, use my community tab, comment, pin things, all that stuff, right? In other words, have functionality to my YouTube again. And that 90 days was up October 4th, just a couple of days ago. And I was like, wow, that lines up perfect with this huge event today, which we have been battling for years to get here to the Supreme Court. And so I was like, when I land, I'm going to come home and I'm immediately going to for the first time in many, many years, go ahead and live stream with you all and share that experience that I have had in the courtroom today. It was amazing, amazing to see it all. Let me kind of like maybe recap like leading up to this, right? So give you all of the take and some of the background. So obviously we know that this Vanderstok case has been going on for years. We have suffered in it. The intention of the rule, which if you haven't been to my blog and read all of the mass censorship that is going on, all of the government's you know tools, their little games that they have played to make sure that the everyday folks weren't able to even be part of the process in voicing their concerns and censoring everything that we did to try to push out information to patriots. I highly recommend that you go over to that blog post and read that blog post as it catalogs and outlines egregious acts that they have done in this process. Uh, However, I know most of you have been lockstep with us every step of the way in this journey, so you're very familiar with Vanderstock, the frame and receiver case, and everything that's kind of going on. However, today was the big dance, right? Today, this morning, was the final frontier, right? The final end uh, for the final showdown, really, for us to make this last case effort, ditch effort to the Supreme Court justices. As you know, and what is really terrible, and the government actually said this today, was that they knew 43 out of 45 businesses in this industry they were going to put under, right? And the 99% of the businesses they were going to put under. And they, were very happy to tout that achievement today, But again, this isn't just businesses, it's businesses, employees, their families. Hundreds and hundreds of American citizens have been already just on the business side of it been impacted in their employment and taking care of their families and so on and so forth. That doesn't even talk about the millions of us that as enthusiasts build these that have been impacted, right? But they were very proud of that achievement. And that kind of just speaks to really some of the disgusting acts that we have seen over the last couple of years. Was this not only acknowledgement but exuberant attitude towards like them championing the fact that they did this to people, right? Very, very sad. However, uh this is obviously the first time that I've ever been to the Supreme Court. I flew down there yesterday. I flew down to Washington yesterday. um I kind of want to kind of give you some insight to it because I know that a lot of you have listened to probably the audio today, which you certainly should have. listened to the audio today, and you've probably maybe even read the transcript. But there was a lot of things happening inside the courtroom, like the body language, everything that you can't ever get. Now, I have listened to countless Supreme Court cases in my lifetime. So to sit there and experience and see how that transitions in that environment, I'll give you an example. I'm going to use this example many times, probably as we do the stream. But when I listened to the bump stock case, I was disgusted. I was, for those of you in the Freedom Crew world, right? I was in a huge chat with the Freedom Crew University folks, and I was beside myself because as I was listening to it, I couldn't believe how poorly we were arguing that case, right? And as you all know, I'm a very big optimist, right? I'm not pessimistic, but I felt myself so defeated listening to that in the audio stream, and then here we came 4 or 5 months later, and the decision came down and we won, and I thought for sure we had lost that case because we did do a terrible job arguing it from an oral argument standpoint. Okay. So I know a lot of you listened to it today, and when I was traveling back to the airport, I was trying to catch up and trying my best to document some of the things that were happening as we were there. We couldn't take phones actually in to the Supreme Court, but I was reading a lot of comments, and there was a lot of folks that were very disappointed in how the attorney argued it today, and I'm going to get to some of that insight for you folks tonight. But I do want to tell you that it is a different experience witnessing it and being able to read the room, watch the justices, watch their body language as they're asking these questions. And again, I mean, we all know that body language, the tone of voice, all that stuff plays a huge role in communication. So I want to share some of that with you folks tonight. Especially as this content starts to roll out, because a lot of people are going to be given their opinions on what they heard and all this other stuff. I was there, so to let you know. So yes, they've put out most businesses. Who has survived? Myself, right? Me, and there's the people that were there, right? The people that this meant the most to. I was there. JSD Supply was there. Defense Distributed was there. And Blackhawk Manufacturing was there, right? That's who was there. Oddly enough, do you want to know who wasn't there? Which I find extremely interesting, and I'll let you all kind of discuss it. But who wasn't there? Well, who wasn't there was Giffords, Everytown, and Moms Demand Action. Go figure. The people that cause the biggest stink, the people that complain, that use all their political, influence, they were the ones that were not there, nowhere to be found, right? I'll let you chew on that in a minute. So let's get to it. So I flew in last night, and it's a late flight out, and then I flew into Dallas, and then had to make my way down to DC and get in a hotel. So I didn't actually get to the hotel and get into bed until midnight, and then I was up at 3:45 this morning. So I'm extremely exhausted, as you could probably tell by my voice. Extremely exhausted, but I get down there. The line when I got there at 4:40 this morning was already almost 40 deep, right? And they only allow 50 in. It was pitch black, and it was mostly law students, very very young folks who are studying to be attorneys, were lined up to witness these cases and use it for coursework. And so I spent most of my morning, probably the first 90 minutes of it, educating everybody in line, all these young minds, on government overreach. And I made some huge inroads with all of them. They were very, very receptive to what I was saying, changed a lot of perspectives. As you know, these young folks are the most influential when they're that age, right? They're still learning. But it was I felt really good. And then as I started to walk down, we came into contact with Defense Distributed and Jordan from JSD, and his entire family. They were camped out overnight since 7 o'clock the night before, right? They were literally sleeping on the sidewalk, right? This is how much this means to us. Like, this is our life. I want you guys to understand, and I know you know that, but this is our life. Like, we're committed to this as our sole purpose in meeting, uh, in making sure that we are there and present for this. And certainly Jordan, his family, camping out overnight on the streets of Washington outside the SCOTUS building tells you his commitment, and Defense Distributed as well. And so we all linked up, and obviously they're exhausted as well. And one of the most amazing signs happened. So one of the and you must take this as a sign of faith, right? But one of the most instrumental people ever in the Second Amendment community, as you know, is Richard Heller, right? You all know the Heller decision. It paved the way for us to actually be here and continue to fight, right? That decision was single-handedly, and I'll just tell you, as Garrett from Defense Distributed put it, is he made it so we could he walked so that we were able to run someday, right? He was that person. We're sitting outside SCOTUS, right? We're waiting in this line, and this like real old guy is just riding his bike by SCOTUS in downtown Washington, and it's Dick Heller, right? So he comes off the bike, and I mean, of all people, right? It's like seeing Elvis for us in the Second Amendment community, and he's just riding his bike at 0:30 in the morning on the streets of Washington. So, he joined us. We took lots of pictures with him. He's a fantastic guy. Gave us, told us war stories about it, and there was so much that I didn't know, obviously, about him in the past. He's had over 16 cases he's been trying to do, and he's still to this day, trying to bring cases before them, firearm cases before them, and beat them again. So a tremendous patriot, and what an experience just for that, right? Just to meet him and hear his war stories. And I'm gonna have to do another longer stream about that, because there's this thing with cough drops, and everybody gets two, and this is like our lucky charm. Like, we're in the winning socks when you watch your team, right? Or winning the dirty underwear that is solely your team's going to win, right? That people have these omens, and ours is the cough drops. But he told us these wonderful war stories. I mean, just so fantastic, and spent a lot of time with us in the morning, really pepping us up, patting us on the back, really kind of passing the torch, I would say, to everybody, that we got this. And we ended up meeting him after, and having lunch with him. Well, I had to leave to go to the airport, and if Jordan's here tonight, thank you, sir. Jordan bought lunch for me. Appreciate that, because I had to ditch and get back to the airport. The food was taking too long. But anyway, so that was a huge inspirational moment. And so after that, a couple hours later, we the Capitol Police came out. The Supreme Court actually has their own police departments. It's not actually Capitol Police. It's the Supreme Court Police, and they are very strict. Let me tell you, very strict. But they took us up. We walked in. You're not allowed to take anything in, so we stopped after they screen us. The first time you get screened several times, we were screened, and then we went into this small locker area where you basically have to put everything in a locker. You can't take any phones, nothing in there with you. So you have to put everything into it. And actually, Cody from Defense Distributed, like, he basically just got like strip searched, right? So he had a little suitcase with him. They made him throw the suitcase out. They're very, very strict. So anyway, we put all that stuff in there, and then we have to reline up. And I guess what was unfortunate is that we were, numbers 1 through like 12. I think there was 12 of us in total. But that's not actually how you seat in there. So you have to reline up just to get a seat inside. So they only allow, it said 50, but then when we were in there, the officer was like, it stops at 40. So, but that doesn't mean that wherever number you were in line in outside guarantees you a seat inside either. It doesn't work that way. Like it's still um, basically the, public viewing is what they allow in. But we went through, they took us upstairs. We went through a second screening, and then we were brought into the actual Supreme Court to hear the hearing. We all sat down. Amazingly enough, there's all sorts of people that are already in there that didn't have to go through what we went through, right? So the director of the ATF sat a few rows in front of us. He was there. Obviously, this case means a lot. One of the biggest things we were talking about is who are they going to bring out? Who's the government going to bring out to argue this case for them, right? And of course, they brought out Liz, which is their top performer. She's done hundreds of cases. She's very well versed. She's the best attorney the government has, no doubt about it, right? And so they had the show of force there, right? You had dignitaries, you had the press there, and they're rolling out their top solicitor, right, for this case. So no doubt about it, they're all in, right? Their cards were all in the table. So once you're in the screening, we were sitting down. I guess I'll save that for another stream, but amazing to see it in person, just to be in that room, the history of that room, the architecture in the room, really amazing, really, really amazing. And so much we could get in. And Cody and I were actually sitting there, like looking at all the architecture and like all the things that you have read in the past, like there's Moses and the 10 Commandments there, right? There's all these things that we have heard, and now you're actually witnessing inside the courtroom. But so we're sitting there waiting. They only allow 4 attorneys up to the front. So FPC, they had their 4 attorneys, but only one is allowed to speak, right? Same thing with the government side. They had 4 attorneys, but only one is allowed to speak and argue the case. So we're sitting there, and they call the court in session. I guess one other thing I want to say is, so not only is it amazing, but it's not as big as I expected. I'll be honest with you. When you think about it, like, so the building is huge, but the Supreme Court itself, it held us 50 people, and then there were pews like you'd be in church, or any other courtroom, basically. But it wasn't massive. It was a pretty, they crammed, a few hundred, maybe 150 of us in there, plus attorneys and all the other stuff, but not a whole lot, not really big, not really big. But anyway, they call the court into session, and the justices come out. We had seen their clerks come out and start like stocking their area with their materials and stuff like that a few minutes before. They call the court into session. And then they get right down to business. It kind of started with, they were inducting some folks into the bar association of the Supreme Court. They did that for the first few minutes, and then they got right into the Vanderstok case. So the way it plays out is they call the government up first. The government came up first in this case, right? They're the defendant, so they get to come up. Then the plaintiff's attorney, which would be FPC and us, come up, and then the government would get a rebuttal to that. And so the government comes up and really, she starts diving in with the propaganda, right? And if you listen to it, she's smart as a whip. There's no doubt about it, right? She knows the keywords, she knows the buzzwords, she knows how to string the words together for impact, for high impact. And we also have to understand that these justices don't necessarily understand the technicalities like we do, right? So when you start using the general broad language, it starts to hit. I'm there watching body language, and I'll tell you the mindset that I was in personally, right? I was of the mindset that if we sat here and, well, so two things really were in my mindset going in. Number one was, this is political, folks, right? Like, that's at the end of the day. These justices are appointed and they're political on both sides. So, the three liberal justices are going to go against it. And that three, well, this is my mindset, the three hardcore conservatives are going to go on our side. And in the middle there is going to be, ABC, Amy Barrett, and Justice Roberts, right? So, like, Chief Justice Roberts. Those two are going to be what I would call the swing vote. They can be swayed, right? So, the question is where do they fall on the fence? But I wanted to go in. So that was one of my mindset. My mindset was watch body language of specifically those two, but obviously the entire room. I want to see the body language, but specifically those two. So that was one mindset I had going in. The other mindset is, to keep the technical lingo out of it, right? And get to, as far as the firearms concerned, but get to the point that this is just clear overreach, right? Like, stay away from all the propaganda as much as we could, and focus on, we just can't have a completely new definition of what a firearm is, because that's dangerous, right? I mean, just a complete redefinition change, and give the government full power to redefine that as many times as they want, right? So not only redefine it, that's bad enough, but then give them permission to say, yeah, you do have the authority to change this. So as times change and the world goes on here, you can change it at will at any time. So I really wanted the conversation to stay on that topic, right? Like, that they don't have that ability, right? Not now and not ever in the future, to just be able to say, well, times have changed, the world's changed, and so we need to reinterpret this a little bit different. So that was my two hopes going in. And I'll tell you, that's not the way it went. Obviously, if you listen to it, that's not the way it went. But how did it go? So the government attorney Liz, she got up there. She did a bang up job. She did her job, right? She did a bang up job. Now, were there a lot of myths, truths, and not actual facts, and a lot of propaganda? Absolutely, but that's what they do. So you have to understand that, unless you're going to sit there and pick apart everything that she said on every one of those things, you just waste all your time feeding into the propaganda. So, that's not always the best use of our time in front of the justices as well. However, she did do a bang up job. And I know, like, we felt it in there, like, wow, she's sharp. Like, you felt it. Okay. She landed, but it's really like, I'll tell you what it was like experiencing it. See, when we watch these congressional hearings, it's exactly like that, where if they bring in a liberal witness, the conservative congressional folks are all over the liberal witness. But if they bring in a conservative witness, then the liberal congressional folks are all over the conservative, right? Like, we've seen this play out. The only difference there is, in those hearings, a lot of it is like pomp and circumstance type stuff, and nothing ever gets resolved. Where here, it's a decision is going to have to be made. They actually have to make a decision of how to move forward. So, but it was very much like that, right? So when she was up, the hard hitting questions to her were coming from the conservative justices, right? They were starting to nail her on this stuff. One of the biggest things was the omelet, right? The grocery list ingredients. If I have a list here, what is it, right? And so she tried to navigate that pretty well, explaining it. And then obviously Barrett jumped in there and said, well, what if I order a HelloFresh box and its intention is that that's where she was going with that. And so, they went back and forth on that. I do want to tell you something else, though, that really stuck out to me. I not only today, I have years of listening to these cases and studying these cases. But I saw today something definite, definite. Their minds are already made up before they walk through that door. Like they already know which way they're going to vote. I think for the most part, right? And the oral arguments aren't really to do anything, isn't really to sway them in the other direction, right? Like I don't believe that they came in neutral. And I'm talking on all sides here. I didn't see that. I didn't feel like they were coming in open-minded and neutral to what was going to be argued. I really felt like, you know what, they've probably read these briefs. I'm sure they have, or the clerks have summarized it for them, and they were already on one side or the other. And what they were looking for is, basically how are they going to write the decision going from here? Like what were the key points that they want to use to write their decision like that, or to justify their vote as well. I felt that was the overarching thing. Anyway, so the government attorney, she speaks, and she the conservative justices are on her about some of these things. She's obviously doing her job well, and making it all about fear and the ghost guns, and the court has to take action. They've got to do something to stop this epidemic, and the ATF, as she's put it, hasn't done anything different than they've always done. They didn't change this or add anything to it. They're just doing what has always been done, which is in their authority, and you know, which is obviously a complete lie. Right? I mean, they've done a lot. It's not just frame and receiver. They're putting in jigs. They're putting in tooling. They're putting in instructions. They're putting in marketing as part of the GCA. Like they've expanded this like tenfold, right? And so, um, but their claim is that they haven't done anything, right? That this is all normal work, and they're just adapting to a changing climate. And no justice really caught on to that, unfortunately, that could say, hey, no, listen, why are all these other things in here then? You're definitely expanding the definition. That didn't really come out when she was up. She was just saying it as a matter of fact. Almost, look, the government is the defendant here, and they were playing victim, right? We don't know why they're coming after us. We haven't done anything wrong. But in the same breath, touting that, 99% of the businesses are shut down, and proud of that fact. So obviously you did something different, right? There was some sort of change that had to occur for that to happen. Um, One of the things that, and I guess I'll talk about that with her rebuttal, but uh, you know, that to me was the overall arching theme of the government's case, which is, pat ourselves on the back. We really did a good job. We're just defendants here. She did say, I'll just jump ahead of a second, in the rebuttal, that if it was so bad, this rule, then actual gun manufacturers, all the major gun manufacturers, will be suing us, but they're not. And she kind of almost threw like a little dig. It's just this little membership coalition over here who has a problem with it, right? Like kind of diminishing, the fact that if we really were in the wrong, then the big manufacturers would come after us and sue us for this, but they're not, right? So, but I'll get to that in the rebuttal. So anyway, that's basically how the government's case was going. The body language, though, was very interesting to watch. Okay. Um, I mean, look, Alito and Thomas and Gorsuch, they were just like hurry up, lady. Like get on with it. Their body language was solid, and we're not buying the propaganda for sure. For sure, they saw through it. Obviously, Jackson gave her, and sort of my mayor gave her a lot of lead room to expand on the propaganda. They asked very leading questions and offered up, I would say, even more additional justification for them to be able to do this. And at one point, even said, Jackson was saying, a lot of the people on this court, meaning, her fellow justices, are going to say that you don't have the authority to do this, and then kind of interjected why she thinks they have the authority to do this. Because somebody's got to do it, right? And like really with that leading question, I mean, obvious what she was trying to do there. But that's neither here nor there. So she sits down, and then the FPC attorney comes up, and he starts getting inundated. So he gives a brief overview, and he starts getting inundated right away by Soto and by Jackson, on the language of it, right? I mean, he starts getting demolished really quick on it by them, and as expected, right? I mean, we expect that, right? And just like the government lawyer took some hard questions as well, we expect it, but they wanted to really get into the technicality, and I think that they were dragging him down that road. One, because that was the main question at hand, but two, I think they're looking to get off on a technicality, right? Because remember, they're defendants, right? They're looking to try to give them an excuse on a technicality of why they can do this. Anyway, you know, th- the summation of this though was that at some points the body language was changing, and I felt it. Cody was sitting next to me. I know he felt it. We weren't allowed to talk in there, and as a matter of fact, the Supreme Court police are like walking around making sure you're not sleeping, you're not talking. They're very, very intense. But you could see the body language in the room changing to favor the government at that point. Like it, because as it got more technical, I think that the justices were having a really hard time understanding what a weapon is and what a frame and receiver is. And I'm not just talking about the liberal justice here. They all were like kind of starting to peak up and trying to really get down into what is it we're talking about here, right? And you never want a Monday morning quarterback these attorneys on our side, okay? And I know it's easy. You have to understand that he was up against the Tom Brady for the government, right? That's their superstar. That is their, you know, has won many cases for them, superstar. So when you start to look at the FPC lawyer, I want to go back to the bump stocks. I walked away for that like pessimistic after listening to it, and we won that, right? So I have a different viewpoint from that, which is you have to understand that we're already in a handicap here, right? I mean, these people from the government, especially her, has argued many times in front of these justices. She's very well versed in their personalities, and so on and so forth. But we have the facts on our side, and I think that's what mattered the most, and what I was looking for. So they start to drill him down on this weapon, frame, and receiver. Now, look, do I wish? Do I wish? Because you had me, JSD, you had Jordan there, and you had Cody. You have the three of America, the world's most fluent builders and manufacturers in the country, right? We can tell you anything you need to know about it. And I will just tell you for me, like I would have just put 35, 40 minutes of that argument to rest. It's this simple. It's really comes down to because they were talking about parts and assembly and disassembly and how it's worded. And it's like, look, if you assemble, if it comes together and it's a frame and receiver with parts and you assemble it, yes, that's a gun. But if it comes to you and you have to mill it, machine it, modify it, then no, right? Assembly is different, right? Because I could take a firearm and I could disassemble it and then reassemble it. Sure, that's a gun. But what's coming to you is not ready to assemble. It's not readily convertible. There is a process. There is a machining that has to be done. There is skill sets to learn, right? Um, but they started to hop on the jig, like especially the government when she was up there, she was like, no, it comes with the jig and it comes with templates, and they want to regulate the jig, and they were flat out asking for permission to, which is so funny because on one breath they're saying that this doesn't expand the definition, but on the other breath they were like, yeah, jigs are part of it, marketing's part of it, and templates are part of it. These things are important. This makes up the weapon to be readily convertible. So anyway, they start hitting, and again, I would have just answered that to have saved a good 30 minutes of our time of, once something comes to you and it has to be modified in order to assemble it, well, then you can't treat that as a firearm because that's not the same thing, right? But they went down this technical road, and obviously we knew that the A and the B part of the statute was going to come up, where because in essence what has happened here is they've taken the term readily convertible out of part A and they've moved that to part B, where to fit their narrative, right? And we know, as we've always known, that readily convertible isn't in part B because it has no business being in part B because it was specifically not put in there, right? So that it didn't encapsulate all of this. So they spent a lot of time arguing, or trying to get to the bottom of what a weapon is, what a frame and receiver is, and where is readily convertible fit into frame and receiver and fit into weapon. And so he was getting hammered. I want you to understand that he was getting hammered, uh, and I obviously, I got to the airport and I had a few minutes. I just about made my flight. Um, but I was trying to post on X, and please, folks. So I finally got on my X account, and I haven't been censored yet. And I'm going to ask you just go at MGB 1776 and give me a follow there, because I have been free to post there and I haven't been censored, which is wonderful, and I'm glad to be back on it. But I started posting threads of my interaction there, and I saw some people really complaining about the attorney from FPC, and again, I want to tell you that he's has an enormous job to do here, right? With uh, you know all the powers against him, but you also have to understand what I said earlier is we've already won this case at every level and every junction we went to. And we won it based on the facts, not because we had a superstar attorney. You understand what I'm saying? And I don't want to take anything away from him. I think under the pressure and from what he could do, were there some layups that were missed? Absolutely, absolutely. But here's the thing: towards the end, as they were kind of drilling down on this, and this is where the body language is so important. This is where reading the room is so important. Okay. uh I'm sitting there, and again, Cody's right next to me, and we're feeling it, guys. There's no doubt about it, we're feeling like we're getting absolutely crucified up there, you know um but then he says, and it was just the most brilliant timing on it. He says, here's the problem that we have with what the government is saying and what all these questions are barraging me with is the government is saying on one hand that if you drill a hole into a receiver, then that is now a firearm. But if I drill a hole, right, one part of the statute, but if I drill a hole in an AR-15, one hole, to make it a fully automatic weapon, well, they don't consider that a machine gun. So it's like, well, you're applying one standard here when it comes to frame and receiver, but you're not going to apply that standard when it comes to an AR-15 and machine guns. And that would, I'm going to tell you right now, that moment was a mic drop moment. Every justice, every one of them, the whole courtroom went silent. He paused for a second right after saying that. It hit, and especially Roberts, who I told you I'm watching, and Barrett, who I'm watching, they start nodding their head. It was just like an aha moment, right? It really was. And you're not going to see that in a transcript. You're not going to see that in audio. I actually tapped Cody on the shoulder at that moment. And I said, that's where we just won, right? And there was this pause for a minute as this kind of like really hit. And then all of a sudden, you saw Jackson and Soto honestly freak the frig out, right? Because they saw it and they immediately both jumped on him, right? With like, and this was towards the end of his argument. And it was Soto who launched it first, right? Because they saw defeat at that moment. There was no doubt about it, right? They saw defeat at that moment because it's too much hypocrisy. You can't get around that fact, right? You can't say, but this is, again, not to go off on a tangent here, but this is the constant problem. They say one thing, they do another, and the hypocrisy and everything just came to fruition at that moment. So she starts jumping down him and again attacking him, really just on him. And so for the last 5 or so minutes, he's kind of just trying to swat and bat that away. Okay. And survive the last few minutes of his points. He finishes that, and he sits down, and so then the government gets to come back up and give a rebuttal. And look, she comes up and she gives an outstanding rebuttal. Again, full of lies, full of propaganda, but starts to try to undo everything that was just done. And she gives it her all. And again, very talented, okay, and very experienced here. So she tries to go through. She didn't speak that long, but she had like 5 points in her rebuttal where she tried to undermine what was just done. And she tried to land the blow. Oh, one thing I didn't say, which is very important, in that mic drop moment. Okay, when that happened, that pause happened, and everybody was shaking their head. Roberts was about to end it right there. Like he was like, and he started to say, like that's it, you're done, go sit down. Like that was enough. And that's actually when Soto jumped in, right, and started to attack. Like it was a heartbeat of a moment, but he was done at that point, and that is the piece that gives me hope. Because remember, I said at the beginning here, that's who I'm watching, right? I'm watching him because him and ABC, they're the swing vote here, right? And if you look at anything with the Supreme Court, unfortunately, Amy tends to follow what Roberts does, right? She doesn't really go against him. And so if he's not on your side, you actually lose this, right? You lose it. I don't really, and we might, I mean, you might see a situation where she would go against him on this, but typically she's going to go his way, right? Whatever he decides. So anyway, he was about to end it, which is when they jumped in. She comes up for the rebuttal, though. She fills it with the propaganda, obviously. Plays victim again. We're not trying to punish anybody or doing anything up here. It's what we've always done. We're innocent. We shouldn't be here. Again, she talks about the fact that there's no major manufacturers suing us. It's this just group. She starts to say that, crime went up 1,000%, gun violence went up 1,000% because of these guns, and 1,000% might be. And she actually said it from 2017 to 2021 over a 4-year period. And this is stuff that we've discussed before. It's like going from one incident to 10 incidences out of millions of these firearms, right? That's 1,000%, but she leaves that out, right? Like we did the math one time, and it was like so insignificant. It was like 1/10 of 1%, or 1/100 of 1%, but it equaled 1,000% over 4 years. But it was like this very, very minor number compared to the millions and millions that are out there. But anyway, she went down that road, and then ended it, oddly enough, ended it with, the court has to decide based on text and history and purpose and meaning, right? Like she using those buzzwords she knows that they're going to reflect on, that they must, rule in the government's favor here, right? And overturn what the federal court already decided. So that was her final pitch. We walked out of there. I think that, like as we were walking out there, so the attorneys came over, and started to interact with us, obviously, and so, right away, I think the mood was still a little shell shocked, again, I want to really express this. The FPC lawyer was taking shots on the chin, you know, and I don't like to Monday morning quarterback, as I said earlier. Uh, I Yes, there were layups that were missed. However, you know, you're talking about you're talking about folks that have won this every step of the way for us. Like, we can say what we think should have been said, but they're arguing what they feel they need to argue, and they're attorneys and they're very experienced at that. So where we may be experts in the technical language and we would have been able to answer some of those questions much easier, the justices seem to be very technical when it came to the nouns, right? The meaning of the word, the history of that word, how we got to this particular word or this particular phrase. And so that's what he was focusing on. And that's where a lot of that time was spent. But anyway, we walked out, and look, the mood among us, wasn't hurrah, it wasn't champion, it was like, digestible, right? Like what happened? Because we witnessed a full-on attack of him, right? As liberals do. Look, the conservative justices didn't really, they didn't really get involved when he was up. They asked some things here and there, but nothing like real major. Again, like I said from the beginning, they were looking to write their decision and was basically asking a question to help them write it, right? They weren't really challenging him on any of that. So, we walked out like that was tough. That was a tough fight, and seeing her up there and performing at her level was tough to watch. Was tough to watch. Uh, But, like we walked out and we get down there, and you know who's out there? Man, hell is out there. He was already like we had given numbers. He was already texting. He was on his way, wanted to go to lunch with us. And, you know, uh he kind of came up, and he could tell that we were, a little distraught, to be quite honest with you, right? We were like, wow, like fuck. Like I felt, kind of like I did after the bump stock thing, but not like in the hole, because I read that body language and I know that that piece really hit home for everybody. You know, if it had just ended there and then they went to rebuttal, I'd feel much different. But the fact that he took a full on assault from the two liberal justices like that at the end there to try to undo what he just did, that was the toughest moment for us, right? But anyway, Heller comes. What a great guy, very personable. He comes, and he can feel that he's a very positive dude, very positive dude. And we're kind of like, telling him like, but he was listening to it. He was outside and he was listening to it, and he was like, "You guys won this. You won this. Like you are reading into this too deep. Like the justices can read through that. Like they've already read through it. You're all set." And he was like, the arguments were correctly made. Like just because, in the way he was saying it, is just because the government is claiming these things doesn't mean that they're landing as fact, right? To the justices, it's not going to. They're going to look at specifically that A and B, that FPC attorney was talking about, and why moving language around to make it fit a narrative they want isn't going to work. And so we asked them, because something like, I think Jordan and I were asking about it, like how did he feel after it? How did he feel after his case? Did he feel like he had lost? And he was kind of like, I didn't know. I knew that we had a case that was good on the facts, but I didn't know if we were going to win. But he started to talk about the dynamics were, different people at the time, but the dynamics are very much the same, right? Where there was two sides being attacked based on, who was there, which party was up arguing. So, we all went to lunch after that. We started to then, really start to talk about what we had just witnessed. And, again, like everything else, and whenever we deal with the government or their interpretations, all sorts of new questions started to come up, because it never makes sense. And, uh, like, so, like, here's a question. Like today, we basically learned, according to the government, that all of you are anyone that owns a AR-15 is in possession of a readily convertible machine gun. Like you're all fucked. We're all fucked. Because even though they said, well, we wouldn't really prosecute those people, but yeah, if you drill a hole in it, well, they're all capable. We can all drill a hole, right? So are we all like, we're all fucked now because we're all in possession of a readily convertible machine gun? Like that's basically what they were saying. And it's like, wow, how dangerous is this world we would live in, where not only do they have free reign, but they're basically saying we're already all holding a readily convertible device. I want to say this also, the part where the FBC attorney made that distinction between the short barrel rifle, where he called that out, boy, that hit home too, man. Like those two things, those two pieces, he was brilliant in delivering those two pieces of it. Don't ever take that away from him. If we win this, like I believe we're gonna win this, and it's gonna be close. It's gonna be close. It is because he landed those 2 points perfectly at just the right moment to shut people up, like to shut the narrative down. That will be, to me, that will be the history if we win. If we lose, we got all sorts of problems here, because not only do they have free reign to make up rules as they go along. I mean, the world changes every day. So, we're going to be in a world of hurt in firearms in general. The firearms in general will be in a world of hurt over this case. This is a must win. It's not even a must win just for us in the building. It's a must win for the survival of the Second Amendment, period. Um, because here's the thing, they will start to do everything under the sun, and it will never get back to the Supreme Court. Like those cases that they start to change and they start to prosecute people, that they'll never get back to the Supreme Court. And as you know, even if one does, it, it'll be decades and decades of people being persecuted, right? um and they will always play innocent like they did today. So Anyway, I think as we kind of reflect on the things that we heard and we start to see a very confusing, obviously not truthful stance from the government's position, but they've made it much more confusing about where they even stand on this. And I think they stand on most issues, which is depending on the moment and how they feel, and that might change tomorrow, right? The problem is that this is very dangerous because these people show up to your house with guns and kill people, right? Like they've done this, right? Over paperwork issues, over the most nonsensical thing. I mean, CRS is in prison because uh, this was a convertible device. Only to find out now you didn't even need that. Just drill some holes, right? They could, you were already in possession of it before you even made that. Like these things are bananas to me, from a gunsmithing perspective. I can't even see a world that we would be able to live in firearms under that mentality. Um, but anyway, that was a lot of our discussion at lunch. Is like, what the hell did they just say? Like, uh, what are they talking about? Like, we don't understand. So I'm going to obviously re-listen to it, but relive it in my mind. I started listening to it on the way from lunch back to the airport. The traffic was horrendous trying to get back to the airport, but I'm going to re-listen to it and visually, remember all of the body language. Unfortunately, they don't let us record it, obviously, but um, you know, the stuff that came out was just unbelievable. The mindset and how they shift based on whoever was asking the question. They'll shift narratives, and she was a linguistics master at shifting that, but never really getting to the heart of it. It was just we believe this and we believe that, but I never really got the why, right? Like we never got down to that nitty gritty of it. And certainly everything that she proposed that they believe, they have contradicted time and time again, uh, as we have seen them go after people out there and our fellow patriots. They have gone after and persecuted and prosecuted. So we know that they don't believe in those things, right? We know that, and that was proven and has been proven and will be proven in the future because they'll continue to do it. Uh, so that was kind of my gist here. I'm obviously extremely exhausted and looking forward to bed. Um, but thankfully, I'm able to live stream for the first time in a few years. I'm able to post on this X account now, again, MGB 1776, and not be censored. So things are kind of looking up a little bit here. And I guess that all we need is this win, or we need a Trump win too. So look, that's going to be very, very important here. Very important. Obviously, that is mission critical. Number one is that he gets in, right? I don't think anybody here is going to test that. And if you are, please see a way out, okay? But he needs to win. And it would be really great if Elon does this government efficiency, right? The DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, because that one of those departments that is going to take a lot of efficiency cuts, and maybe even our one opportunity ever to actually abolish it, because JD doesn't believe in it and has said he would like to abolish it, that this is our one chance to get rid of it. So if that occurs, then all this stuff doesn't matter. All the things that we're talking about doesn't matter because it was a rule that they made up. And if they no longer exist, then it wouldn't matter. And if Trump were to win and say, nah, I don't like that rule, that would do it too. It would be null and void at that point, right? Because it really wouldn't matter. So, I think we obviously want to win it. So it's in stone in the future. And no matter what happens politically, right? Because this is always a role of the device, and I don't want to go down the political role, but you guys know as well as I do, shenanigans up the woozar over here, right? So we need an actual concrete decision from the Supreme Court on it. We don't want to rely on Plan B in that aspect. Anyway, I wanted to get this out to you tonight. I am going to go to sleep because I am absolutely exhausted. And now that I can do this, we're going to do more of it. And I'm going to reach out to a lot of the other folks that have channels and offer up to go on and start to, talk about the experience here. Maybe I can arrange something with some of the other folks that were there to come on here, but I'm going to try to go on the circuit of other, YouTubers that are trying to get the message out, that need to grow their channel to help them, right? I mean, that's very, very important to me, to get that message out and help those channels grow. So I'm going to be trying to do that. So look for some interviews on other channels, where we start to talk about this case and where we're going to do and what we're going to do marching forward. I'm going to tell you, it was fantastic. If I was to leave you with a parting note, um, this was the first time that me, Jordan, and Cody and the defense distributed team, who are hysterical, by the way, funny, funny, funny folks, were ever able to be together at one point. And what an amazing moment to be on the steps of justice for us to finally all come together in one sitting and walk those steps of justice to walk in. I mean, that was truly a fulfilling part of this journey. I think for all of us, but I'll speak for myself. It was to do this with my fellow brothers who, have been in the fucking foxhole, man, on the front line, um, taking these hits, the abuse from these agencies. I understand we have taken them personally. I don't mean we've taken them personally. We felt it. They have come after us personally and against our families and done some egregious acts against us. And for us to finally come together at that moment and be able to walk up those stairs today was nothing short of something that I will cherish for the rest of my life for sure. And then Heller just coming by randomly was the icing on the cake, like, and all of us together there was truly amazing. And look, I hope we win this and we're able to be able to share this in the next generation of the fight when we're 80 years old and can ride a bike by SCOTUS and run into the next generation that's doing this. But I feel truly blessed to be with all my brothers today. Uh, feel completely fulfilled and honored and privileged that we're still standing and we're standing together strong, and we will never give up. I mean, that was kind of like our final like farewell at the end of the day, is no matter what happens, we are still standing. We have survived this, and we will, with all of our being, survive whatever outcome it is. And not only we will survive, we will continue to fight and we will continue to push this industry forward. We will continue to work together collaboratively with our minds and put out the most innovative education and the most innovative products and design things and just push this to the limit, because there is one thing that can never be argued by anybody. We are the most committed patriots to this community, to helping patriots get freedom in their hands and exercise their fundamental rights. We are a team of undying and unwavering advocates for people to exercise their freedom. And we're willing to fucking die for that. And that is clear. in whatever sense that means. Whether you try to kill us financially, you try to kill us emotionally or spiritually, or you try to kill us through persecution, or you try to fucking kill us, we're going to still push forward. And yeah, that was my lasting impression of this. And I'm very grateful for this day. I'm very grateful to God for this day. So thank you all. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I'll be seeing you soon. Simplify.